Welcome back to another episode of the Dreamz Podcast. My name is Jose Gonzalez. I'm a sex therapist. I work with guys who out of control sexual behavior and couples, and anything sex related is up my alley.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brad Hinman. I also am a sex therapist and also work with primarily men with out of control sexual behavior, but I also see some couples and some individuals that don't have sexual issues as well.
Sweet. Today we're switching it up. We've been talking about other things and for a long time, infidelity mainly, but today we're switching it up. We're talking about pregnancy. And as you can tell, we're pregnancy experts. Just kidding, we're not. But but we will be talking about the male's perspective throughout the pregnancy process. Like I broke it down into like 5 kind of sections, if you will. There's like getting pregnant, and that's a whole plethora of things. People assume like, oh, it just happens, and that's a whole nother thing. Mm-hmm. There's that, and then once you get pregnant, there's the trimesters, first, second, third, and then sometimes they'll coin, or they'll have, when the baby's born, early on when they're born, they call that often the 4th trimester, and all the transitions and stuff that happen at that time. So we're, in my opinion, in my thought, is we're coming from the guy's perspective, like, what does that look like for your relationship? What does that look like for sex? What does that look like for, especially the guys we see, the out of control sexual behavior guys? Mm-hmm. How does that impact? Because I know I've talked to many guys that pregnancy kind of can become difficult when it comes to recovery from out of control sexual behavior. I've heard that often. So yeah, we're gonna talk about all of those things. We may break this up into two episodes, but I think it's a good an important topic. So diving right in, what have you heard? You were just talking about a kind of a story from one of your clients, but there's specifically with regards to the fertility area before people are pregnant. What have you seen in your clients? In regards to whatever, what are some things you've heard?
Well, pregnancy is such, people have a huge variety of experiences surrounding pregnancy. Mm-hmm. Some people get pregnant very easily, mm-hmm. almost accidentally. I don't like the word accidental because we know what causes pregnancy. Right.
But, sex, is that what? Oh, okay.
Right. So they unintended, I suppose, is a better word. So there's some people that get pregnant and they didn't intend on getting pregnant, but then there's some people that have tried for years to get pregnant and were unable to get pregnant. And there's lots of various mm-hmm. things in between there, losing the baby through miscarriage. Or stillbirth, that can also affect subsequent pregnancies, or the ability to have subsequent pregnancies. So there's lots of stuff. It's kind of generally fun to try to get pregnant, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Because it means you get to have sex a lot,
right?
But then also from the male's perspective, like. I've heard from clients that like trying to get pregnant, it takes the fun mm-hmm. out of it sometimes mm-hmm. for both the male and the female.
Right. It's not sexy anymore.
Right, because now it's a purpose. Like there's a reason why you're supposed to. So it's more like a chore now, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And so that can be difficult because we have to have sex like today, mm-hmm. right? And often as many times as you can in that 24-hour right. period or 48-hour period, right?
Yeah.
And so it seems like a wonderful problem to have, is having sex 2 or 3 times a day. But it can also become, like I said, a chore or a burden.
Right.
To do that.
Right, and I mean, take that into account. The first thought that comes to mind is a guy that's struggling with erectile dysfunction, for example, like. A lot of times the pressure of just sex in general often gets the guy's head, but tack on the pressure of like, okay, this is what is going to make us pregnant or whatever I have to perform in order for us to be pregnant. Like on top of that, you know, that added pressure or whatever. I've heard that for sure. That's a difficulty.
Yeah, and whenever you add, when we're talking about male erections, like whenever you add, I have to perform to that adds, it increases the chances that you're not going to be able to perform. Right. Because any kind of stress is not conducive to normal sexual functioning. Again, for both males and females, right? So this I have to perform, because we're trying to get pregnant, so we have to do this, that can decrease your chances of being successful even. And you're worried about it, and you're tracking, the temperature and all that kind of stuff to see when the optimal time. So there's a lot of added stress to that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think the theme, and of course not to frankly, not to shit talk pregnant women because they have it the hardest, I would say. Like this is like, it's an assumed thing that they're going through more things than the guy, So that being said, I think the theme specifically for guys throughout the entire process is exactly that. Like the woman has it harder. Like what do you have to worry about? What do you have to complain about? Or you should be there for them. What's your issue? You know what I mean? So like you had mentioned, a couple was saying like they were trying, and he just has to show up, and she has to do all the things like track the cycle and, stick herself or whatever, track the temperature, like all these things. And again, I'm not disagreeing, but I think that also, like, again, I think it makes me think of our guys that come in with issues with sexual issues, that there's another added layer of pressure to be like, okay, you have to be very put together for your wife because she's going through all these things. So then all your stuff gets pushed down, you know what I mean? Yeah. Again, throughout the whole time, and we'll highlight that through each step, but especially in the beginning, depending how long fertility is taking, depending on what process the wife is going through. Like one of my good friends, she had endometriosis, and it took so very long to realize what it was, and then she finally got surgery for it. It was just a whole thing, and of course rightly so, you should be there for your partner, but it definitely will have the tendency to push those things to the background, what guys are going through.
Yep. Well, and I think that's true in a lot of circumstances, right? Because men tend not to talk about their emotions, and so then it makes it easier to push their needs aside, or their emotions aside, and stuff them down, don't talk about it. Because the female, when you're trying to get pregnant and you're having some difficulties with that, there is a lot of burden on the female, right? There's a lot of things to do, because then she's focused on doing all of that, then the relational aspect of the relationship is suffering, right? Because you're focused on some external thing instead of the relationship.
Right. And not to mention, if you continue in the process of fertility and all that, once you get to IVF, for example, there's the financial component of it that's intense, added some more added pressure, something that costs a lot, especially if you don't have insurance that covers fertility stuff, Yeah,
it can get very expensive.
Yeah. So what would, pausing here for a second, what would be something that we would tell our guys specifically in the beginning when you're trying to get pregnant and stuff like that? What is something that our guys can do,
And I tell them, don't forget your relationship, right? Don't forget you're in a relationship with this person. Do what you did at the beginning of the relationship, right? Buy her flowers, buy her candy, whatever. Talk on the phone for hours, whatever you did at the beginning. To get this person to fall in love with you, you need to keep doing that. And so, focus on, because if you focus on dating this person and getting them to fall in love with you, then the sex will come more naturally to that, right? And it won't be maybe such a chore to do it.
Right.
If if the sex is a natural byproduct of the love that you share with this person, then it's going to be easier and less burdensome to do that. And so, don't forget to go out on dates, and don't forget to, say nice things to this person. And it's to me, sex is, it can be a casual sexual hookup with people that you don't know, but sex within a relationship is relational, right? There should be some kind of exchange there where you're trying to meet each other's needs.
Right. And keeping in mind the why. I mean, obviously everyone has different whys to why they get pregnant, and if it's unplanned, whatever, but if possible, the why of it was theoretically to enhance your relationship, arguably, but you know what I mean? You would, I guess maybe that's in an ideal sense. But anyways, like keeping in mind the relationship, because that's where the kid is coming from through the relationship.
I've heard that too, that like we should have a baby to like improve our relationship. It's only childless people that say that. Because having a child, especially more than one child, it can
does not inherently improve your relationship.
Correct. So
I love you, Levi and Ariana.
Yes, it can be stressful. We have 4 children between the 2 of us. So we've seen it, and so children are a lot of work. They're forever, for the rest of your life. It's a lot of work. So
it requires intentionality. It's not just natural. Like you're adding this thing into your relationship, and now it's naturally gonna trickle down and be like, this is great. It requires intentionality.
Right, and now you have more. You're adding things to worry about into your life, and so now you have more things to worry about. You still only have the same amount of time, in a 24-hour period, and so you have to be intentional, obviously, about spending time with your children and helping them grow into wonderful humans. But you still have to worry about this relationship you're in as well.
Right.
Because if you're, it's kind of a cliche, but like if you're not pouring into your relationship, then it can flounder and die. And so often, unfortunately, people who start having children, they forget about that relational aspect, and then when the kids leave home, if your relationship lasts that long, then you wake up next to this person and say, "Who are you?"
Right.
Because I've been focusing on these kids for 20 years.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yep. Right. So keeping the relationship fed and nurtured. Cool. So then, fertility happens, and again, we can always expand later on. Fertility. Finally, the couple gets pregnant. And then there's kind of that first trimester thing or time frame. What are some issues that you've seen or that our guys can go through during that first trimester where, there's a variety of what happens. Often women may get nauseous or like morning sickness, low energy, stuff like that. And also the uncertainty of like, wait, there's a baby in there, but like you still haven't had your first ultrasound to be like, okay, there is a baby in there. I've heard that. I know my wife experienced that. Like, I'm sure it's in there. I feel it, but you can't tell. Anyways, what are some issues specifically at the very beginning that you've heard?
Definitely morning sickness, right? It's because once the female does get pregnant, lots of hormonal changes happen. You're creating a new human inside of you. Like a lot of stuff is like just your blood volume. I think it increases by like 30%.
Yep, that's right.
You literally have more blood. And so a lot of women are physically hotter, like not attractive, although that might be. They're like, they feel hot all the time. Some women do, and that's the problem with talking about humans.
Yes,
There's so much
variability.
Right?
Yep.
But so morning sickness is huge. It's hard for people to want to have sex when they've been throwing up all day.
Sure.
And so,
funny enough.
Yeah. But then the man's like, hey,
I'm here.
I want to have sex. And so, and then there's this thing called nesting that happens, right? At some point during pregnancy, women and some men too, of course, will go into like this. So you're focused on getting ready, getting prepared for the baby to arrive. Redoing the baby room, painting, and all these things, and so these are all things that's going to subtract from the relationship if you're not purposeful to put energy back into that. Also, I've had guys straight up tell me, like, I don't know if I can have sex with her because there's a baby in there. So, like, I've had guys say to me, am I, like, ejaculating on the baby's head? Am I gonna, like, pop the sac that the baby is in, and like, is she going to go into labor if I have sex with her? So there's some myths surrounding that as well. The concept of pregnancies, women's bodies are pretty resilient. The baby is pretty protected, and so when guys tell me that they're afraid to have sex with their wife because she's pregnant, and like afraid that it's gonna like accidentally abort the baby or whatever, I'm like, you're pretty you don't have a lot of credit there.
I was just gonna say, you don't have super sperm, buddy.
But I get the concern.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because you're inserting something else, and there's already a human in there, and like, what's happening? But the baby is pretty protected.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's funny, going back to the nesting thing. I'm sure I've said this story, but it's still funny. This what my wife was, I think it was towards the end. Anyways, my nesting hit my wife pretty hard. I come home one day, one of my late days or something. It's probably like 8 o'clock or something like that. I don't know. And I'm like smelling something like a strong, like painty kind of smell. I was like, what the heck? We had talked about like our fridge, and we're like, maybe we should get a different fridge. And Heidi was talking about, okay, maybe there's like this stainless steel paint that she can paint the fridge, and at least it looks a little bit better. I'm like, okay, whatever, cool. And I'm sure I was planning on painting it myself, because I'm not gonna have my third trimester wife painting or like whatever. And I come home and it's a strong paint smell, and she's painting the fridge stainless steel paint, which is extra strong compared to like regular paint. No mask, like she had pulled the fridge out or something. I'm like, there's so many things wrong with this scenario, but it's that desire to like nest was stronger than anything. I'm like, what are you doing? Like all these like paint fumes, and it was insane. And she's just doing it. She's like, I have to get the fridge prepared for the baby, which I don't know why. The baby's not gonna eat anything out of the fridge unless you put breast milk in there.
Baby's not coming home if the refrigerator doesn't look spectacular. Exactly. The baby will reject
you have to stay in the hospital until but it's just crazy. Yeah, it's true.
Pretty strong.
It's intense.
Some people can go a little crazy.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So early on, as and another thing especially in the earlier stages is like the possibility of a miscarriage in their first trimester or whatever. That's intense. Sometimes you don't even realize, and other times you catch it. And depending on the level of, like, our friends were trying for a long time, and they were like on every step they were like, okay, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. So they caught it pretty early. So if you're like monitoring that intensely, then you could catch it, and then they're like miscarriage, where if normally you wouldn't have noticed that. Anyways, the point is, there's that issue that's concerned. So with that being said, like the initial part of pregnancy, again, the same question: what are some things our guys can do, in that beginning time where you finally caught or whatever?
It's a really good question. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things that I'm thinking of. One is I'm going to repeat. Like,
Yeah.
be purposeful about your relationship. Pour into that relationship. Date her. Have conversations with her. Reassure her. Be there to support her. Tell her that it sucks what she's going through, and all the changes that's happening to her body. Because often, like, when women are pregnant, that from what they're telling, like, I mean, I've never been pregnant, but like, from what they're telling me, that like, their body doesn't even feel like their own anymore, right? Like, because now this child, this baby has taken over my body, and changes are happening to my body because of this baby. So that's one whole category of, like, be supportive and do stuff to build your relationship and to make her feel loved. Now, there's another aspect to that, is the guys can feel ignored, right, during that time, because she is kind of into the nesting mode, and she's tried really hard to get pregnant, and now she is pregnant, and now she has all this morning sickness and all this kind of stuff. And not all women get morning sickness, by the way, when they're pregnant, but, but it is very common. And so, the woman is going through all this stuff, and so the man's like, but I'm still over here, and I'm still lonely, and I want attention, and that can be like offensive to their female partner, because they're like, I'm growing a baby.
Right. What do you have to complain about?
And you're over whining because I'm not saying I do. But that's a problem that I've seen in sessions, is that the male partner feels ignored and dismissed, and all those types of feelings like that. So I guess my advice would be the same for females. Like, don't forget to pour into the relationship. Don't forget to show this person that you still care. And so it is, I mean, literally a life-changing event that's happening, right? And so they still need to be conscious that they're in a relationship, and that relationship needs nurturing and growth and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think communication too, like, I know in my own experience, I have the tendency to focus on other people's needs anyways. So in my own experience, like, when my wife got pregnant, I had the tendency to, like, just not talk about any of my stuff. Like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's not as bad. Yep. So I'm not talking about it at all, and fully supporting 100%. So I think in communication is also important, of, like, what's going on with you? Like, how are you feeling? Are you doing okay, given the circumstance? Of course not, if you're sick all day, every day, it's not great, but communicating that, or the guy's needs, like, hey, I miss you, I miss our physical intimacy. I know we probably can't have it now, but I miss you, communicating that, even if it doesn't happen necessarily. I think that's important as well.
Communicating is always going to be the answer.
Yep. For every question.
So you're right, though. That is another issue that happens, is a lot of times guys will, it's almost like they disappear, right? Like, not physically, but they don't talk about their needs, because they're like, my partner's going through all this stuff, and so I'm not going to talk about what I need. I'm not going to talk about what I'm going through and how this feels for me, because she's doing so much, and that is harmful as well to the relationship, because when you go into that mode, then your needs are not being met, right? And then you're not even saying that your needs are not being met. You're just swallowing that and letting it disappear,
right?
And that's not good either. Right? So, finding ways to talk and have nice conversations, and, what are you going through, and tell me about your life. And then the same thing should be asked of you, right? Like, tell me about your life, what you're going through, and what are you feeling?
Right. Exactly. Cool. So then, pregnancy's going along, and hopefully you've stopped getting sick. Some people have morning sickness the entire time, but, okay. And then in the middle seems like kind of like a lull of, like, okay, this a little bit stable. You're far away from the first, but you're not quite at the third, where it's like about to go down, if you will. I'll put this question to you. What are some things to focus on in the middle, you found out the sex of the baby, and you're kind of just like starting to build up the nursery, whatever, it's kind of a lull. What are some things that come to mind in that time?
Well, and I think complacency is kind of a danger there, right, in the second trimester, because for some women, if they do have morning sickness, sometimes that subsides in the second trimester. Sometimes, like you said, it lasts the whole time. But, so if the morning sickness is going to go away, generally that happens at some point during the second trimester. And like you implied there, like you're kind of getting into the swing of this pregnancy thing. Okay, we know we're pregnant. We know what we're having. And you might have started accumulating stuff for the baby room now, and stuff like that. But again, communication.
Communication is the answer.
Yep, and spending time together. Just because you're in the second trimester being pregnant doesn't mean you shouldn't have dates and all those kinds of things like that. A lot of people will go on like a baby moon.
Yeah.
Right? Like a honeymoon, but right before the baby is born. Because your life changes when the baby is here. It's a lot harder to travel. It's not impossible, but it's harder. And so sometimes they'll take a trip. Because the second trimester, like I said, perhaps the morning sickness is starting to subside, but you're not in the third trimester, which is very uncomfortable to walk, and you have to go to the bathroom every 30 seconds. And and so the female is generally not as uncomfortable in the second trimester as they were in the first or the third. So complacency is like I said, is a danger during that time.
Yeah.
Because what I mean by complacency is we're not trying, we're not pouring into this relationship, we're not doing the relational type things together, because we're focused on preparing for this baby.
Yeah.
So don't let up off the gas.
Right.
Don't drop the reins.
Right.
Whatever now.
Yeah.
Because that is a danger during the second trimester.
I almost feel like, it'd be beneficial to ratchet it up because you have more opportunities for the date night where you don't feel like crap, or like the food that doesn't smell good as much. I mean, that can remain throughout, but maybe it's a bit more stable in the middle. You can go and eat places that wouldn't have been possible first trimester, or like, again, you have more time, and you almost feel like, I feel like as to our guys, it's like maybe you up your energy and up your intentionality of like doing things that are sweet or whatever, and then the other thing too that I thought about, again, bringing it back to our guys, is the complacency within the guys that we see as far as with problematic sexual behaviors. The complacency can extend to that as well, where the guy, you feel settled, so then you stop doing some of the things that have brought you success in your recovery journey, if you will. You know what I mean? Like, you can see that happening as well. Taking care of yourself, I guess, is the theme.
Right, because if earlier we said that, sometimes the guys don't talk about what they need because their partner is going through all of the pregnancy things, and so they don't talk about their needs. They just kind of ignore those and shove those down. And then if you already have a tendency towards problematic sexual behavior, that's going to increase the likelihood that you're going to engage in your problematic sexual behavior because your needs are not being met, right? And so you're going to, I don't want to burden her, so I'm going to go out and do this thing that's going to hurt her and burden her.
Right, burden her worse.
And so, but sometimes that's what happens. And guys need to be careful to talk about what they need in the relationship in a way that's not going to be offensive. Like, don't be a jerk about it.
Right.
You also need to express your needs and your desires and your hopes and your plans for the future and all those things, right? Like, I would love it if every couple would, at least for an hour a week, just sit down and talk to each other about their plans and their goals and, where would you like to go on vacation? We may never know, but talk about it.
Right, exactly.
All the details, right? this is not in my brain, in my perfect world where everybody lives
right.
in my head. This is not the time to talk about budget and, did you pay the electric bill this month or whatever? No, it's to talk about your relationship, right? And all the wonderful things that are happening between the two of you. I would love if every couple would do that at least once a week. And I have had couples do it, and their relationship improves when they do that consistently.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. In a world, Hinman world.
Yep.
sounds like a fun time. The other thought I had too, and this for any of the trimesters, I suppose, but it may be beneficial for guys to find a friend, a buddy, or someone else that's going through similar things, or that's recently had a baby, or that's pregnant themselves. That's ideal, almost like, so you can have another guy that you can talk to, like, hey, this my wife has been doing this, or like I feel kind of like this, whatever. Having that perspective from another dude, I think that's definitely beneficial.
I think that's an excellent idea because for people who've never had a baby before, like, this is all new, right? And spoiler alert, sometimes the second pregnancy is much different than the first pregnancy. So
so, exactly. And you didn't have a kid the first time with the second pregnancy.
Yeah, another kid worked out when you were pregnant the first time. And so I think talking to, like, having a mentor sort of thing, right? Like somebody who's gone through this, where people can say, oh yeah, that's normal, that's typical, and it'll pass, that's only gonna last a few weeks, and then she'll be fine.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's and then you'll have new problems in a few weeks. But
yep, right.
Like it's just good to have somebody to talk to about that, because I was gonna say this when you mentioned miscarrying the baby. That's something that we don't talk about in society, right?
It's true.
It happens
so often.
A lot of people. A lot of people lose babies, and it's just not talked about. Like, that is a secret that you have to carry forever. I mean, in recent years, it's been getting better. But still, like,
that and fertility as well. Even the beginning of it. Is struggle to get pregnant. I feel like that's those two things. About. Like, you just go through it alone. It's crazy.
And both of those can be harmful to relationships. Like, both of those can actually cause relationship breakups if they're not handled correctly. And again, how do you handle that correctly? Communication.
There it is. Back to communication. Right? I mean, because I'm gonna have to look that up, but there was after the death of a child or something. I don't know if it was necessarily miscarriage, but that like divorce rate goes up or something, right?
It's in the top 5. Yep.
It's crazy. Yeah. So then, you're out of the complacent stage and you're doing dates and whatever. Anyways, third trimester comes and you're at the finish line, if you will. That's a whole nother set of issues, challenges, or areas of growth. I don't know. It's a whole other set of issues. You got, more discomfort. The partner's having more discomfort, maybe more self-image things, body image things, perhaps, as they're growing. More just ready for the baby to come out, just not feeling it anymore. Stuff like that. More appointments that you're having to go to, especially towards the very end. Yeah. What is our guys going through in that time?
A lot of stress. It's true. So, in the third trimester, your partner's going to have trouble breathing. They're going to have to go to the bathroom every 30 seconds. They also don't eat very much. Like, they're always hungry because they eat like 2 tablespoons of food and they're full. So that means a half an hour later they're going to be hungry again. And so it can be quite stressful, and also sex during the third trimester can be a challenge, right? Because I don't think that would be comfortable to have somebody climb on top of you when you're 8 months pregnant. Right. And so, of course, there's other ways to do that, but you might have to be creative and find new ways. And men tend not to be...
I know exactly what you're going to say. Creative.
Right? When it comes to sex. Like, and of course, the people are like, oh, no, like creativity. Well, you really don't. Because, when men find something pleasurable, they do it the same way, the same time, every time, right? They do it in the same order. And so they really don't like things to be, especially forced to be changed up.
Right.
But like your partner may need to lay on her side when you have sex, right? Because her laying on her stomach would be very uncomfortable, but having somebody lay on her stomach might be very uncomfortable.
Right.
And so, you know,
lots of pillows.
With body pillows, right? To kind of support her stomach, especially in, you know, month 8 or 9. She may need something under there because gravity is going to pull on the baby and it's going to hurt. And so there's just lots of things to think about during that process. I have heard, again, that fear of if we have sex and she's 8 or 9 months pregnant, am I going to pop
penis going to hit the baby's head? Put a dent in the baby's head or something.
Yeah. And so, again, I think you're being a little ambitious there, but I have heard that fear.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
and,
for sure. Or like I think also just generally wanting to be fragile or feeling like you don't want to hurt them or something like that. Like not just that they're the penis thing, but in general, like they're more fragile, which is funny because childbirth isn't fragile at all. but there's that viewpoint of like, I don't want to hurt her, you know.
Yeah.
But
again, talk about those things, right? Talk about, because if you're afraid you're gonna hurt your partner if you have sex with her, or you're afraid you're gonna hurt the baby if you have sex with her, and so then you don't do that, but you don't communicate that with her while you're not doing that, she's gonna think, I have turned into a beached whale.
Right. And of course he doesn't want to have sex with right. You just both lose. And then you're not getting your need met because you're not having sex with her, or you're not feeling intimate, feeling close to her.
Yep.
Just physically.
So you have to talk about that, and you have to say, you know, I love you and I want to be with you, but I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid I'm going to hurt you, or I'm afraid it's going to be uncomfortable, or I'm afraid I'm going to hurt the baby. Like, talk about those things, right? Because if you don't, I mean, that's the only way that I learned that people had these myths is because people told me they had those myths, you know, that they had those fears. And I'm like, I don't think that that's as big of a fear as what, you know, I don't think that's actually going to happen. So I could kind of talk them through that. But if I couldn't have talked them through that if they didn't share it, right? So you have to talk to your partner. Because otherwise she's going to make assumptions why you don't want to have sex with her anymore. And they're probably going to be wrong assumptions, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Because they're going through a lot. Like, their body is changing, and they're afraid it's going to be permanent, and you know, there's a lot going on.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and again, it goes back to, for me, especially towards the end there too, is like our guys making sure they're taking care of themselves as well, because you're it sounds harsh, you're of no use if you're not well. You know, if you're breaking down, especially as in a time where they need you the most, whether that's maybe you're making food more often because they can't cook certain things, or whether that's you're getting the baby room together, building furniture, whether that's whatever, like there's just more stuff happening, and you as the partner, you as the man should have your shit together. You know what I mean? So you breaking down isn't helping anybody, you know, not to say that you have to hold everything up and be like perfect, but also taking care of yourself so you can be the best support person that you can be, you know, in that time.
And so, so take care of yourself, exercise, get, you know, proper nutrition, proper sleep, you know, because if your partner is incapacitated because she's so uncomfortable from being 8 or 9 months pregnant that she can't move, then you're going to need to take care of yourself, right? Like literally feed yourself and clothe yourself and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, groom yourself.
Yes, right. And so and her. Maybe
maybe you have to clip her toenails or like something. There's things that she probably can't do.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
That's perfect transition. And now, finally, the baby's here. Woo, yay!
Yeah.
You know, best day of your life, and it's smooth from here on out. Not true,
right?
but happily ever after. Again, there's that. Then the baby comes, and I think that's the same what you said. Also, like if your partner is incapacitated, if you will, you know, there's the recovery that happens just from pushing a baby out. There's, you know, depending on if it's a C-section, for example, a longer recovery, and all that stuff. The real work begins, I guess. What are some, with infants and stuff like that, what are some things that you've heard from couples, or what are our guys going through in that time, would you say?
We have about 3 more hours to answer that question.
I low-key thought about, like, then we might need to cut this part and do a second, and maybe we still will, but at least a little brief one.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is doctors will tell you that you can't have sex for 6 to 8 weeks, right? While the female body recuperates from growing this human and delivering it. And so that's a big deal, right? And so you guys should talk about that ahead of time. Like, what's going to happen during that time? Is it okay if I masturbate, you know, during this time?
Right.
You know, it's unfortunately a part of life, right? That because the body needs time to recuperate. And so that's a big deal. But even aside from the no sex for 6 to 8 weeks, you know, now you have this tiny human that can't take care of themselves. And so somebody needs to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, right, and feed that baby, or 2 o'clock, or whatever it is.
Or multiple times.
Like, somebody needs to wake up and feed that baby, which also means that somebody's going to get puked on at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so your life will never be the same. I feel like this episode is
a great way to end. You will never be the same.
Because they always get sick at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Of course. On a Friday when it's a weekend, like, damn you. Yeah, or I can bring you into your pediatrician. Oh my gosh. Flashback. Trauma
now.
Oh,
but it's like and again, now we're back to another thought that I have is, like, the male is not going to get as much attention because you really do have this helpless tiny human now, and a lot of her focus is going to be on keeping that baby alive, and not on your physical and emotional needs, right?
Right.
And so, the solution to that is communication, right?
Of course.
And so, and I don't mean, like, when I say communication, I don't just mean the male saying, hey, I'm over here and you're ignoring me.
Yes, right.
Communication, like, here, let me take the baby. And I will take care of this baby while you take a nap. That's sexy.
Yep. Right. Absolutely. And you do it without her asking.
Yes.
Like, that's points right there. Absolutely.
Right. So another thing to keep in mind too is, especially if she's breastfeeding, but even if she's not breastfeeding, like, she grew a baby in her abdomen and delivered that baby either through cesarean or vaginally, and now that baby, like, needs to be held and needs to be nursed and whatever, and the female body then becomes a vessel to keep a human alive rather than a sexual vessel.
Right. That those boobs aren't yours anymore. Right. That's kind of what the thing. Yeah. They belong to the baby. If they're breastfeeding, assuming.
Right. And well, and even if they're not,
but even still,
for a while they're still lactating, even if they're not breastfeeding.
Right.
And so,
true.
If those breasts are touched, then milk's going to come out.
Yeah.
And that might not be sexy. Like, maybe it is for some people, but
that's all right. Don't yuck someone's yum.
Right. So the idea there is the body has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's not the purpose has changed.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to imply that the female's purpose before was just
yes.
female pleasure, but I have heard from guys even like that produced a baby. Like, am I even supposed to be able to have sex with her again?
Right.
Because now she's a mother. You know, she's not just my wife or my partner or my girlfriend. And so that can play psychological games on people. Yeah. Right. Like, which then again, if you're having those concerns or those doubts or whatever, and you don't talk to your partner about that, she's gonna think he's not having sex with me because this baby ruined my body, and now he's not attracted to me anymore. Yes. So you have to talk.
Have to talk. And we're gonna definitely have a separate episode of the fourth trimester. But actually going back, you know, you brought up a good point about the as the partner experiencing childbirth, like going back a little one into childbirth, like that changes your experience or may change your perception of your partner's body. You know what I mean? Like you said, like that body the baby just came out of there. Like, oh, what do I? Again, that either that fragility thing or that like, oh, like I don't want to impose myself on her or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it definitely changes your viewpoint of it, especially early on. So again, it's come back to communication. Like, I think guys having an outlet to talk about those things, whether that be with your partner, like, hey, you know, this is how I'm feeling, or whether that be with a buddy, or whether that be with some friends or something, like being able to express that, because otherwise it's just going down, it's just going in. It's being stuffed, you know what I mean? And of course, you don't want to burden your partner, but where does that energy go? In the case of our guys with problematic sexual behavior, generally will go that way. Yeah, you know what I mean? Whether that's porn, masturbation, or other sexual behaviors, it's probably going to go that way if it's not going anywhere else, you know? But just in general as well, you're stuffing it. Even if porn and all that stuff isn't an issue for you, it's not going anywhere. So that needs to come out somehow, you know? And it's okay, although, you know, your partner is doing a lot of the work and they're going through this huge thing. You are too. They're going through this huge thing, rightly so. You know, you are still allowed to express those feelings and you're still allowed to talk about that stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
and talking about it often makes it go away, right? Stuffing it doesn't make it go away. It often makes it worse, right? If you don't talk about it and you just keep it all locked up inside, then that's when problems start. But talking about it often makes it go away. And so, you know, once that's why there's therapists in the world. Because talking about it helps you feel better.
Right. We'd be out of a job if it didn't. Exactly. Yeah. So we're definitely we'll pick up on the fourth trimester at some point, because that's a whole different ball game. But again, you know, we talked about communication, you know, being intentional about the relationship, you know, that came out about, you know, having an outlet to bring that energy. Doing things when you're not told is sexy. That's another thing that came out. It's a time. That just brings me back to my kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. It's been a while now, but it was definitely a time. And it's okay to be, you know, I will say to our guys, it's okay to want to be supportive of your partner. You know, it's also okay to take care of yourself. Yep. You know,
and the baby.
I guess you can take care of the baby too. Take care of the baby. Please take care of the baby. That's true. That's another thing. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah. So, anyways, any other thoughts about our pregnant guys? And they're not pregnant, but communication is a big one. Yeah, for sure. And if you have. Obviously, we want to hear people. I'd love to hear people's like experiences and stories. You know, maybe we'll put a poll out or put like a social media post. We'd love to hear you as the guy how that experience went for you, because I think it varies a lot. But I feel like most guys have a similar experience of like, I have to be there for my partner. You know, it's tough sometimes. Yeah. We'd love to hear from you guys. Feel free to check us out on our social media, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. The Wet Dreamz Podcast and any content posted is intended for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment. Listeners should not disregard or delay in obtaining a medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.